the former buddy of Aki, the former devil hunter contracted with the ghost devil, the women who gave Denji his first ever kiss, the women who loved Aki, and a woman who only appeared in 15 chapters yet still played a large part in the story of our other important characters. Himeno was, despite the short time we got to spend with her, an important character who right up until the end of the series plays a part, even if she isn't directly called out or credited with anything. Her influence still continues on, through Aki, then through Denji. If it's not her being a portion of the reason why Aki eventually turns away from the idea of chasing the gun devil and growing closer to Denji and power, it's the fact of how her death affects Denji, the main character of the story, or how it doesn't affect him, which is just as interesting as he himself thinks on the matter of her death. Hello and welcome to this video. I am the Anonymous Weeb and this is a character discussion with regards to Himeno, a star which faded too quickly. Looking into her purpose in the story, the influence she expands across the series, her different relationships within the cast, her powers. But with that intro out of the way, let us get into the meat of this entire video, the discussion, starting with Himeno's purpose seems quite obvious when you first read the series. She is set up to be Aki's love interest, unrequited as the affection is. She is also set up to push Denji to solidify his affection for Makima, by both testing that desire and by deliberately putting him off of her and pushing him into Makima's waiting grasp. The notorious puke scene is enough of a proof for that to be true. But if you reread the story, you start to notice things which you might not have picked up on the first time round. Himeno and her subsequent death is a trigger, a metaphorical kick to the teeth of every reader of the story. Up until her death, never in the series had we seen a character we had invested time and emotion into been killed off for good, especially not one who had broken the top 10 popularity list not once but twice. She was clearly a character that a great many people liked and still liked. Her existence seems a lot crueler and more sadistic when you put it in the lens of a helpless individual, set up all the hope, love and care only to be used as a tool to ignite the flames of the entire series. If you think about it, it was only after Himeno's death that the shackles on the series shattered. No longer did Fujimoto need to hold back on killing off important characters which other more conventional authors in Shonen Jump would have steered clear of. He proved that Chainsaw Man would still be popular, or rather more popular the more extreme he went. Going a step further, you could say that Himeno's existence was only ever implemented to serve the purpose of putting the cracks in Makima's character before anyone else starts to pick up on them. She is the first one who really starts to question why both Denji and more importantly Aki are so attracted to Makima. She is the first person to call out on Makima's shitty personality. Up until then, people don't really ever complain about Makima directly, even Power doesn't complain about Makima's personality or point it out. Once you realize just what Makima is and how she has manipulated everything and everyone up until that point, the fact that Himeno, even in a drunken state, has enough mental fortitude to question what everyone else seems content to just accept is interesting and makes a second read through all the more interesting with hindsight, which I believe is her secondary purpose in the story, giving everything she said and did more oomph than it might have done originally. From her failure to kill Katana Man even at the cost of her life, showing the absurd resilience of hybrids, to her demonstration of the true risks which come from being contracted with a devil. As up to that point we heard about the consequences of contracts, but we never got to see the actual physical ramifications of it, at least not to such an extreme level. Moving on to the influence of Himeno's life and actions within the series, can be felt all the way up until the end of the series, not obviously of course since only a few characters remain to remember her and none of them speak of her directly at the end, but the fact they continue to live is thanks at least in part to her. The most obvious display of her influence is within the character of Aki. Through her relationship with him, she was able to push him away from the destructive path that he was on. Even if she failed to help him cross that final line, she was able to keep him from completely shattering as a person and, as she described it, leave him with the ability to still cry. She in her own way, protected his innocence and helped him become the man he was at the beginning of the series, something which might not seem so impressive until you put in respect how he was when his family first died and how he could have turned out. We have all seen the brooding Avenger-obsessed character type in manga, So let's be thankful that Himeno was able to keep him from going completely off the deep end. But if you are to look at the other influence she has in the series excluding Aki, you can look to both Denji and Kobani. While neither of them go out of their way to think of her throughout most of the series, the fact still remains that without her, neither of them would have been able to survive the incident with the Eternity Devil, and Kobani was directly under Himeno's instruction during the first incident and probably was one of the people responsible for training her. While we don't know how regular new recruits are trained in the world of devil hunters, we can assume that there is at the very least some sort of basic training, which Himeno was likely responsible for giving to Kobani. If you don't like speculation, you can consider the fact that Himeno's actions were responsible for saving Kobani's life with regards to the Eternity Devil. If you want to look at Denji, she was the first person to put doubt upon Makima and to cause Denji to become conflicted with his own desires, proving to himself that it wasn't just his libido pushing him to seek out Makima, which was a rather large moment in Denji's own development. That seems to be a reoccurring thing with Himeno. Her actions only ever result in advancement for everyone else. She is just forgotten about without being given credit. Not even Aki at the end seems to speak of her. Moving into Himeno's relationships, which are a major focus of her character, at least with regards to Aki and to a lesser extent Denji, Kobani, and Kishibe. However, the issues comes in that she wasn't around for long, nor was she given much of a chance to express her own feelings regarding many of the cast, but even so I'll still look into what we were able to get from her short time in the series. Starting off with Denji, the main character, the one which the story revolves around and who, one way or another the cast is all connected to. Himeno is the first woman, outside of Makima, to actually get Denji's attention in a semi-romantic light, even with power that was more of a lustful intent as he was only after her body at the time. However, it was through his interactions with Himeno, both putting him into situations which push him towards Makima, while also forcing upon him his first major realization with regards to what he is after his interaction with power and the breast incident at least. Her attempts to convince him to sleep with her, even in her drunken state, was enough to push him to confront the idea that he loved Makima, enough that he wouldn't willingly sleep with another woman, regardless of the fact she was offering him something he had been seeking since before he even became a hybrid, the chance to sleep with a woman. Their relation gets a bump after the drunken night Denji spends with her, sleeping beside her. The pair of them agree to work together, both pursuing the person that they have taken a romantic interest in. From the way that Himeno invites Denji over to come and eat, along with bringing Aki, Power and Makima with him, it can be assumed that they have developed an odd sort of friendship. That's completely ignoring the fact that she was ready to kill him and feed him to the Eternity Devil so that they could escape from the hotel that they had been trapped into. This had less to do with Denji and more the pressure of losing not only her life but the lives of everyone else, probably most importantly Aki, by having them waste away in the hotel when sacrificing Denji would get them all out, presumably. Denji doesn't appear to hold any hostility towards her for this, not hugely surprising given his track record of not really holding he past against people, as long as they are beautiful women anyway, and Himeno also doesn't seem to want to dwell on the past, which isn't surprising given her own past experience dealing with her actions affecting others, such as her former partners, all of which passed away while she alone survived. Within the scant time we had with Himeno, Power is one of the characters she had the least number of meaningful interactions with. They went on one job together which resulted in Himeno threatening Power using Ghost's power when Power had casually threatened to kill Kobani, so not the greatest first impressions of each other. That being said, neither Power nor Himeno seemed to be particularly against the idea of working together. The fact that Power was responsible for not only healing Aki but also helping to try and save Himeno's life, before she decided to throw it away in a last-ditch attempt to stop Katana Man and the Snake Summoner, probably put them on at least decent terms. It's hard to say, but Power didn't put up any sort of fight when it came to trying to heal Himeno, which in of itself is a sign that Power isn't against helping her, considering she even lamented having to heal Aki before back during the Eternity Devil incident, claiming to only heal him because he was the one responsible for making her food. How their relationship might have developed is a mystery, Perhaps they could have been friends, or maybe Power's selfish and destructive tendencies which dragged Kobani into more and more trouble would have seen them opposed to one another. We can never say for sure, only that in the end it doesn't matter because both of them die trying to save something important to them, making them more alike than probably either of them would have ever expected. The relationship which Himeno has with Aki is the most developed and important relationship she has, both as it involves the story and is her personal drive to move forwards as a character. The two were originally introduced to one another as buddies, the partnership system of the public devil hunters, shortly after Himeno had lost yet another partner. Both of them were already broken by that point, although Himeno notes that Aki is still able to cry, meaning that he hasn't lost all of his humanity yet. It is in this moment that Himeno first tells Aki not to die, initially done out of a desire to not have to find yet another new partner, but as time goes on this disposition continues to change, with Himeno being one of the people to introduce Aki to the idea of smoking at a young age. Despite him turning it down, it's pretty clear from the fact that Aki does in fact smoke that she had some kind of impact on his perception of smoking in general as well. We also see during a flashback that she at least once attempted to convince Aki to quit being a public devil hunter, to stop his quest for vengeance against the gun devil, because at that point she had come to realize that Aki was far too sane to live through a fight like that, too normal, too much of a regular human being with a regular thought process. Himeno, who had already lost many partners who were just that, realized that if Aki faced off against the gun devil, he would die not because of an overwhelming strength difference but because the difference in their mentality. We are told by Himeno herself that the reason she likes Aki is because of his looks, although I doubt this to be the only reason, as her affect seems to stem from something different, something much more, to put her life on the line to save him, to place his safety before completing a mission which could save thousands of lives. I believe that her reasoning behind wanting to protect him and the reason for her love are something rooted within Aki himself and not just his outwards appearance. We can't be certain what that is, beyond the simple fact that he was the person she spent a majority of her time around during her jobs, meaning that naturally they would grow closer, and adding on to that the fact that Aki was so normal, in a career that sees the normal people dying every day of the week, must have been quite a stunning sight for someone who had seen the way such people crumbled before the devils over and over again. I don't believe that if Aki had become as insane as Kishibe, as Himeno, or as Denji, that she would have had nearly the same level of affection towards him. Rather, I feel like she would have become detached from him, seeing him as yet another devil hunter who would eventually stop being the person she once knew and become a different beast altogether. In the upcoming novel, which is said to focus on the idea of buddies, hopefully we will be able to get a greater idea of what their relationship was like and how it developed from the start, but until then we have very few clues to go on, beyond the fact that even after her death, Aki doesn't forget her, and her death helps to spur on change within him that without it he may never have seen. The realization of how the direction his life is taking could impact others and even bring the people he cares about to ruin is enough of a confirmation that while the romantic interest may not have been reciprocated, that Aki at the very least cares about Himeno enough to consider her life intrinsically more valuable than facing off the gun devil, even if he had yet to realize that fact and required that something else, his new family in Denji and Power, be threatened for him to be put back on track for his mental recovery, something which unfortunately never gets realized. Moving on. Kobani was one of the two new recruits which seemed to have been placed under Himeno's command for the Eternity Devil incident, and while their interactions are very much reduced to superior and subordinate, the fact that Himeno goes out of her way to threaten Power, a fiend for casually threatening Kobani, and the fact that Himeno goes out of her way to try and keep them all from going overboard when it comes to killing Denji, until she herself starts to lose it, points to the fact that at the very least Himeno was concerned about Kobani's life and mental well-being, treating her less like an actual subordinate and more like a friendly co-worker. But unfortunately we don't get to see much of this interaction due to the short time we have with them. You can squeeze what you want out of their interactions, but it's difficult to make anything of them. You could say that Himeno's death was one of the factors which inevitably pushed Kobani out of the life of a devil hunter, or you could not. It's really hard to say. Moving on. The relationship between Kishibe and Himeno is perhaps even more muddy than any other we have spoken of up to this point, owing to the fact that we don't actually get to see them interact in the current storyline, rather their interactions are strictly limited to flashbacks. However, based upon that, the both of them have a good relationship, with Himeno referring to him as master, seemingly indicating that they had a teacher-apprentice relationship. Perhaps not too unlike the one which Kishibe has developed with Denji and Power before her demise, probably with a less murderous intent, at least I hope so. Kishibe seems to consider Himeno one of those who was unlikely to die, because she wasn't quite sane, but apparently, she was still too sane for the job. Seeing as they were open to drinking with him, it can be assumed that at the very least they had a cordial relationship outside of work environment, but since we never get to see them interact in the current storyline, we can't say for sure how they would treat one another. Moving into the final relationship I want to discuss. Makima. This is a relationship which is of interest to me in particular, because she is the earliest person to start questioning why Denji and more importantly Aki was interested in her. Himeno seemed to consider her to have a bad personality, something which wasn't shared with a majority of the people in the series as well as a lot of fans at the time, so Himeno thinking it indicates a negative relationship, based upon the fact that Aki had such a vested interest in Makima. Himeno oddly enough hit closer to home with Makima's true personality than a lot of other people in the series. It's just unfortunately no one else recognized this fact, otherwise we wouldn't have had to go through such tragedy at the end of the series, but alas, you not know what they say about hindsight. Sorry that this relationship section is going by so quickly when you only have so many chapters to go off and so few meaningful interactions between characters. You are kind of limited on what you can and can't say on the matter. So, moving on to her powers, or rather the powers granted to her by her contract with the Ghost Devil. By allowing her eye to be consumed by the Ghost Devil, she is capable of summoning one of the Ghost Devil's arms. This arm possesses immense physical capabilities, easily able to strangle Power, a fiend who herself is a powerful individual and dealing significant damage to the Eternity Devil. Unfortunately, the Devil having the ability to hide its weak point made it a null point, as it could just continue to regenerate from any attack she would launch at it. This arm could be manifested over a significant amount of time and could be used to grab onto things and move them around witties without actually needing to harm them. These arms also seem to have some form of intangibility, as they were capable of passing through the Katana Man without outwardly harming him. She was also able to use the entire force of the Ghost Devil for a time in exchange for having her entire body consumed, but that doesn't mean it wasn't impressive. It was easily able to overwhelm the Katana Man for a short time, someone who was at that point far beyond what they could be expected to deal with. But that's it for this video. If you liked it, don't forget to like, and if you are so inclined to subscribe, then I welcome you as I attempt to reach 500 subscribes before the end of the year. Otherwise, I wish you a good day or night wherever you are.